Commander Sarah Chen stood at the bridge of the ESS Adventurer, Earth's first purpose-built diplomatic vessel, watching the massive alien station grow larger in the view screen. The Galactic Assembly's headquarters, unofficially dubbed the Hive by her crew, hung in space like an abstract sculpture, all sweeping curves and impossible angles that seemed to defy human architecture. Final approach vector confirmed. Her navigation officer, Lieutenant Rodriguez, reported, "The Assembly's traffic control is particularly specific about their protocols." Sarah suppressed a smile. That was an understatement. The approach procedures they'd received contained over 700 pages of regulations, most of which seemed unnecessarily complex. They'd spent the last 3 hours executing a series of precise maneuvers that could have been accomplished in 15 minutes. "Well," she said, "let's not ruffle any feathers before we even dock. Follow their patterns exactly." The ship glided forward, matching the prescribed approach vectors perfectly. Sarah used the time to study the other vessels around the station. Ships of every imaginable configuration moved in perfect, predictable patterns, like a mechanical ballet. The contrast with Earth's typically pragmatic approach to space traffic couldn't have been more stark. "Commander," her communications officer called out, "we're receiving a correction notice." Sarah frowned. "What for?" "We're following their approach exactly. They say our engine harmonics are—" The officer paused, checking the translation, "culturally insensitive to the Marath species. They're requesting we adjust our fusion drive frequency by 0.03%. Sarah bit back her first response. This was exactly the kind of thing they'd been warned about. The Galactic Assembly was ancient, set in its ways, and obsessed with what they called civilized protocols. Every species that joined was expected to conform to thousands of years of accumulated traditions. "Make the adjustment," she ordered, then added under her breath, "Heaven forbid we upset anyone's delicate sensibilities." The ship shuddered slightly as the engines were retuned. Sarah watched as their approach continued, now apparently with the correct engine note. She'd studied the briefing materials extensively, but nothing had quite prepared her for the reality of dealing with the Assembly's bureaucracy. The real challenge would begin once they docked. Earth's admission to the Galactic Assembly hung by a thread. After centuries of isolation, humanity had finally been noticed when they'd developed their own FTL drive. The Assembly had immediately sent representatives, expecting Earth to gratefully accept their guidance and oversight. They hadn't expected humans to have opinions of their own. Docking procedure initiated, Rodriguez announced. "They're sending us 13 different welcome protocols. Follow Protocol 7, Sarah instructed, recalling her briefing. "It's the one reserved for potential probationary members." The ship settled into its assigned berth with a gentle thud. Sarah straightened her uniform and nodded to her executive officer. "Well, time to go make history, or get kicked out of the galaxy's most exclusive club." The welcoming committee waiting in the docking bay was a sight that would have seemed impossible just a few years ago. 3 different species stood in perfect formation. The tall, willowy Ardani with their iridescent skin, the crystalline Zexti floating in their containment fields, and the massive Ursine Calf in their ceremonial armor. Sarah led her small delegation forward, carefully counting her steps. The briefing had been explicit: 15 steps forward. Stop, bow at precisely 30 degrees, wait 3 seconds, then speak the traditional greeting. Any deviation would be noted and could affect Earth's application status. She made it 12 steps before the station's artificial gravity hiccuped. Sarah stumbled, caught herself, and straightened immediately. But the damage was done. She could see the Ardani's skin flashing with colors of disapproval, while the Zexti's crystals chimed a note that needed no translation to convey disappointment. Only the Calf showed no reaction, but Sarah had studied their body language. The slight tilt of their ears spoke volumes about their assessment of human grace. "Honorable representatives," Sarah began, fighting to keep her voice steady and diplomatic, "I bring greetings from Earth, and—" "You did not complete the approach of civilized intent," the Ardani representative interrupted. their voice musical but cold. The protocols are quite clear. 15 steps, precisely measured. You have shown concerning disregard for our most basic customs. Sarah felt her face flush. My apologies, but there was a gravity fluctuation. A prepared species would have compensated. The Zexti chimed in, their crystalline form vibrating with disapproval. Perhaps humans are not yet ready for membership in civilized society. The Calf representative remained silent, but their massive forms seemed to loom larger, radiating judgment. Sarah took a deep breath, remembering her mission briefing. Humanity's future in the galaxy could depend on these first moments. She could swallow her pride and start over. But something made her pause. The gravity hadn't just hiccuped. She felt the station's deck plates shift slightly. After years in space, she knew the difference between a system malfunction and deliberate adjustment. They tested her, and now they were waiting to see how she'd respond, how quickly she'd abase herself to please them. Sarah straightened her spine and met each alien's gaze in turn. "Representatives of the Assembly," she said clearly, "on behalf of humanity, I look forward to learning your protocols and traditions, but I suggest we begin our relationship with honesty." The gravity shift was deliberate. "If you wish to test us, you'll find humans respond better to direct challenges than hidden ones." The silence that followed was absolute. She'd just broken another protocol. Junior species were never to accuse senior ones of deception. Sarah could practically feel her crew holding their breath behind her. Then the Calf did something that made the other aliens step back in shock. They laughed. The sound was like distant thunder, and their massive form shook with genuine amusement. "Well said, human," they rumbled. "Well said indeed. Perhaps your species will bring some needed directness to our ancient halls." The Ardani skin had shifted to patterns of confusion, while the Zexti chimed discordant notes of protest. But Sarah knew she'd made the right choice. Humanity would join the Galactic Assembly, but they would do it on their own terms. She had a feeling this was just the first of many protocols they'd end up breaking. The Assembly's main chamber was designed to intimidate. Sarah sat in her assigned seat at the lowest tier, surrounded by representatives from over 1,000 species. The ancient races occupy the highest positions, literally and figuratively, their perches floating near the chamber's vaulted ceiling. The human delegation continues to demonstrate concerning behaviors. First Speaker Vexnatal's crystalline form sparkled as they addressed the chamber. Their ships dock improperly. Their communications lack proper honorifics. They ask questions without permission. Sarah clenched her jaw. 2 weeks of this, and her patience was wearing thin. Earth's admission process had devolved into a daily recitation of human failures to observe proper protocol. Furthermore, Vexnatal continued, they have requested access to historical assembly records. Such presumption from a probationary species is unprecedented. Because we found inconsistencies in your records, Sarah thought. The public archives show the assembly as a benevolent guide to younger races, but her team had discovered references to species that had mysteriously withdrawn their membership after challenging assembly decisions. The humans require correction. An Ardani elder chimed in, their skin rippling with authoritative patterns. Perhaps a century of observation before we consider their application further. Sarah stood up. The movement sent a ripple of shocked whispers through the chamber. Probationary species weren't supposed to speak without explicit permission. Commander Chen, Vexnatal's tone carried warning, you have not been recognized. No, Sarah agreed, her voice clear and steady. I haven't. Just as humanity hasn't been recognized for developing faster-than-light travel independently, or for maintaining peace among our colonies without assembly oversight, or for the advances in medicine we've offered to share. This is unprecedented. An elder species representative called out. The protocols clearly state. The protocols, Sarah interrupted, are a cage. They're designed to keep younger species dependent on assembly approval for everything from trade to colonization. She took a deep breath. We've discovered records of the Nexari and the Koth. species that disappeared from assembly records after questioning these protocols. The chamber erupted in chaos. The Ardani's skin flashed warning colors. The Zexti chimed in discordant protest. Only the Calf remained silent, watching with interest. "This is outrageous." Vexnetl's crystalline form vibrated with anger. "You dare to accuse." "We dare to seek truth," Sarah stated firmly. "Humanity joined these proceedings in good faith, but we won't be silent partners in our own suppression." "Guards," an elder called out, "remove the human delegation." Sarah stood her ground as assembly security approached. "Remove us, and Earth withdraws its application immediately. We'll also share what we found about the disappeared species with every spacefaring race we encounter." The chamber fell silent. Sarah could feel thousands of alien eyes upon her. She'd just broken virtually every protocol of diplomatic conduct. She'd also just played humanity's only card. The Calf representative's deep voice broke the silence. "Perhaps we should hear the humans out." "This is unacceptable," Vexnetl protested. The protocols, the Calf rumbled, "have perhaps grown too rigid with age, like crystal that becomes brittle." The subtle dig at the Zexti wasn't lost on anyone. Sarah kept her expression neutral, but inside she felt a surge of hope. She gambled everything on this moment, betting that at least some assembly members must see the problems with their ossified traditions. "I move," the Calf continued, "that we create a special committee to review both the human application and the protocols themselves." Second, came a surprising voice, an Ardani elder, their skin showing patterns Sarah had never seen before. "The humans are disturbing, but perhaps we have grown too comfortable in our ways." The chamber erupted in debate. Sarah retook her seat, exhausted but satisfied. It wasn't victory. Not yet. But they cracked the assembly's perfect facade of unanimity. Change, she realized, was inevitable. The only question was whether the assembly would adapt or shatter. The next month transformed the assembly. Sarah watched from her office in the human delegation's quarters as protests erupted across the station. Younger species, emboldened by Earth's stand, began questioning centuries-old restrictions on trade and expansion. Another demonstration in the lower halls. Lieutenant Rodriguez reported, showing her the feed. Dozens of species gathered, their signs in multiple languages, all carrying similar messages: reform now and equal voice for all. "The assembly security is getting nervous," Sarah noted, watching the guards' tense postures. "Any word from the review committee?" Still deadlocked. The Calf and their allies push for reform, but the Zexti block every proposal. Sarah's terminal chimed with an encrypted message. Her eyes widened as she read it. "Get me a secure channel to Earth. Now." The message contained proof. Records showing how the assembly had deliberately hindered technological development among member species. The protocols weren't just tradition. They were control mechanisms. "Commander," her communications officer called urgently. "The Ardani delegation requests an immediate meeting. They say it's about the Nexari." Sarah's pulse quickened. The Nexari's disappearance had haunted her since discovering those first records. "Arrange it. Maximum security." The Ardani representative who arrived wasn't one of the elders, but a younger member whose skin showed patterns of anxiety and determination. "What I'm about to share will shatter the assembly," they began without preamble. The Nexari didn't withdraw. They were eliminated. Sarah felt cold. Eliminated? When species become too independent, the assembly arranges accidents, failed containment fields, reactor malfunctions. The Nexari developed shielding technology that would have made younger species less dependent on assembly protection. They had to be removed. Sarah thought of the gravity malfunction during their first meeting. Not a test, a warning. "Why tell us this?" "Because you've started something that can't be stopped." The Ardani's skin rippled with determination. "Many of us have suspected the truth for centuries, but we were too afraid to act. Humanity's defiance has given others courage." Sarah's terminal chimed again. Urgent message from Earth. Their colonies had detected massive energy signatures, assembly warships dropping out of FTL. They're moving against us, Sarah realized. The assembly wouldn't risk another Nexari situation. They'd eliminate humanity before the revolution could spread. She hit her emergency comm. All human personnel, evacuation protocol Alpha. This is not a drill. The Ardani skin paled. They'll destroy your ships before they can jump. Sarah allowed herself a grim smile. The assembly forgot something important about humans. We planned for betrayal. Throughout the station, hidden devices activated. The assembly's supposedly impenetrable security systems crashed as human viral code, planted weeks ago, took control. Attention all species, Sarah broadcast on all frequencies. The assembly has lied to us all. They've murdered civilizations that threaten their control. We've uploaded proof to all public networks. The choice is yours. Remain slaves to their protocols, or stand with humanity for true cooperation. The station erupted in chaos, but this time, it wasn't just protest. It was revolution. Now they would see if humanity's gamble paid off, or if Earth would share the Nexari's fate. The next 6 hours transformed the Galactic Assembly into a battlefield, not with weapons, but with choices. Every species had to decide, stand with the old order or embrace change. Sarah coordinated from the human delegation's command center, now a fortress of improvised defenses. The Assembly's approaching warships would arrive in hours. Status report, she demanded. 47 species have publicly declared support for reform. Rodriguez answered. The Calf have mobilized their fleet to intercept the Assembly warships. The Ardeni are split. Their younger members support us, but the elders maintain control of their military. The Zexti had barricaded themselves in the upper chambers, their crystalline forms broadcasting frequencies that kept their loyalist forces in line. But they couldn't maintain control forever. Sarah's terminal flashed with a priority message. The Zexti first speaker requested private communication. Commander Chen, Vexnetl's voice held none of its usual superiority. You've forced our hand. The Assembly exists for order. Without our protocols, chaos will reign. Your order is built on genocide, Sarah countered. How many species have you eliminated to maintain control? Fewer than will die in the coming conflict. Stand down. Withdraw your accusations. We can still prevent bloodshed. A new alert flashed. The Assembly warships had accelerated. They'd arrive in 2 hours, not 4. No, Sarah replied. Humanity won't submit to tyranny, no matter how ancient or sophisticated it claims to be. She cut the communication and opened a channel to all stations. This is Commander Chen. The Assembly warships approach. Every species must choose now. Stand with humanity for true equality, or submit to another 1,000 years of control. The response came not in words, but in actions. Throughout the station, ships began powering up. But they weren't fleeing. They were forming a defensive line. The Calf fleet held the center. Around them gathered ships from dozens of species, some ancient, some young. Many were former enemies, their conflict stoked by Assembly manipulation. Now they united against a common foe. Assembly ships dropping out of FTL, Rodriguez reported. There, holding position. The Assembly fleet was massive, but they faced something unprecedented. Unity born not of enforced protocol, but of shared purpose. Sarah opened a channel to the Assembly flagship. This is your last warning. Stand down, or face the combined strength of those you've oppressed. The protocols end today. For long moments, nothing happened. Then, one by one, Assembly ships began powering down their weapons. Commander, her sensor officer called out, the Zexti chambers. Their power signature is building. They're going to overload the station's core. Trust the old guard to choose destruction over change. Sarah hit her emergency broadcast. All ships, emergency evacuation protocol. Get clear of the station. But before anyone could move, something remarkable happened. The Zexti power signature vanished. Message from the Ardani. Rodriguez reported. Their younger faction just seized control of station systems. The Zexty elders are contained. Sarah let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. On her screens, she watched assembly ships continuing to stand down. Not surrender, not yet. But the threat of violence was passing. Now came the harder part, building something new from the ashes of the old order. 1 year later, Sarah stood in the transformed assembly chamber. Gone were the hierarchical tiers. Representatives of all species sat as equals in a circular arrangement. The new compact is ready for final ratification, she announced. Each species will maintain autonomy while contributing to our shared future. No more protocols of submission. No more engineered conflicts. No more hidden extinctions. The chamber, now called the Galactic Council, had changed fundamentally. The Zexity, under new leadership, had abandoned their rigid control. The Ardani's younger generation brought fresh perspectives. The Calf's steadfast support had proven crucial during the transition. The human concept of checks and balances has proven invaluable. The new Calf speaker rumbled. No single species or group can dominate the others. And our technological cooperation has advanced all our civilizations, added the Ardani representative, their skin showing patterns of pride and optimism. Sarah reviewed the achievements of the past year. Shared research accelerating development across all member species, dissolved trade barriers fostering unprecedented economic growth, and joint exploration missions pushing the boundaries of known space. There will be challenges, she acknowledged. Democracy is never easy, but we face them together, as equals. The vote was unanimous. As celebration erupted around her, Sarah reflected on humanity's role. They hadn't just joined galactic civilization. They'd helped transform it. The old assembly's rigid protocols lay shattered, replaced by something more dynamic, more just. And in the end, it wasn't human technology or military might that had changed the galaxy. It was the simple human refusal to accept arbitrary authority, the willingness to risk everything for equality and truth. As she watched representatives of ancient and young species alike celebrating together, Sarah smiled. The real work was just beginning, and humanity would help lead the way.